Hi, so long story short, I finally graduated college this weekend.
All right, folks, we're ready. Congratulations to the classes of 2020 and 2021. It is this moment for our graduates to participate in this very important time-honored tradition that I know you've all been waiting for. So graduates of 2020 and 2021, let's turn the tassels, please.
And so now I'm qualified to teach secondary English education, barring my license gets approved and what have you. And I'm really excited about it. It feels kind of surreal. And so to celebrate, I have completely thrown away my book buying ban for the month of March because that's right, I'm not supposed to spend money on books this month. And I went on a goodwill tour of Greenville with my bestie Gina, who came down for graduation / Mother's Day. And we sort of looked at the different thrift stores and Goodwills and Habitat for Humanities and used bookstores, looking for books that can go in my classroom library. So I have two different wish lists. One contains materials that I want to use in the classroom, and the other is a library list. And I will link both in the description if you feel so inclined to help me out. And it was just to give an idea to people who maybe don't know me and don't know the things that I'd like to involve in the classroom, to have an idea of what I'm looking for. But we were able to find quite a few things that were on that list in these thrift stores, and a lot of things that I wasn't even looking for. Not to mention, Gina came with a bag of books that she had gotten from where she lives. So I'm actually really pleased with how this turned out, how this weekend was a success. And I'm not going to give too much more preamble because you're here to see a haul. I know that's why you want to see the books that I got. And I'll try to explain where everything came from. It's kind of hard for me because we did go to so many similar places and I don't remember exactly where certain stuff came from. And then I did get books for myself. I mean, most of this was for a classroom, and some of the things I got myself will probably also go into the classroom once I read it, but they're things that, like, those are mine. So I'll show you those separately, but let's go ahead and look at what I got and where I got them from for my classroom library. So for my overall classroom library list, I'm looking for things that may be classics, obviously, reimagined classics, maybe graphic novel editions of books. I'm looking for nonfiction in stories that would be interesting to certain students. I'm also very interested in historical fiction that talks about things they may address in a history class, because we want to be cross-content whenever possible. If they're learning about a certain event in if they're learning about a certain event in a history class, it'd be really cool to show them a YA novel that takes place at the same time. And I'm actually pleased that some of the historical fiction I have here has nothing to do with World War II, because let me tell you, there's no shortage of that. And even though the Codename Verity book is like amazing, there's other periods in time where youth were involved. So I tried to look for that too. I'm really pleased at sort of the mix that we were able to find of classics, new releases, and like decent nonfiction for high schoolers to read. So let me just break this down for you and go more or less place by place into what we were able to get. This is actually going to seem like backwards because I'm starting with the last place we went, but that was because I emptied that box last, and it was the Habitat for Humanity. And they do what is called a baker's dozen, so if you get 13 books, it's $5. And with that challenge, we found Dracula, and this is retold from the original. And I know, I'm a purist, I like to read the classics. High schoolers might not. I'm going to accept this if you want to read Dracula. It's probably a lot more readable. It's got illustrations in it. And let's be honest, if you've read Dracula, you know it's pretty dry. Like, the movies make it seem like it's just action constantly, but it's kind of a dry novel overall. But I got this really nice hardcover of Dracula. We also found Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children in an almost brand new copy. I've never read this, but I think it is popular with certain high schoolers. We found It's Trevor Noah, Born a Crime, Stories from South African Childhood, and this is actually adapted for young readers. I had the just regular version in my wish list, but this is probably going to be better for high schoolers to read, and if they're still interested, they can read the other version. But that'll be a really good kind of nonfiction memoir, I think, that some students may relate to. In that same vein, we found I Am Malala. and this is sort of her memoir autobiography, and it's just important for them to see these stories of people their age doing just amazing things, and someone may pick this up and get something out of it. So again, I'm not the hugest nonfiction memoir biography person, but I'm not going to stop my students from reading those if that's what they're interested in. And I think both of those stories have really good things in them for them to learn about. We have another classic, The Great Gatsby, and this one is, you know, I've got like 4 copies now that are going to go into a classroom library, but that's also because I have no idea what's going to be stocked in the reference books that the school has access to. So it's good to have a couple copies in case people can't buy one if I want to teach it. But also someone may want to read it for fun. I mean, Great Gatsby is, you know, barrel of laughs. We also found the one and only Ivan, which I have heard about, seen people read, and it's apparently popular, but I haven't read it, but someone may want to read it. Also on my list of books that we found while we were there, The Book Thief, which may make someone cry, but I think this is a very age-appropriate book for maybe older high school students. I believe I read it in college, but I can see how this would still appeal to younger readers. We have It's Kind of a Funny Story by Ned Vizzini, and I actually have a copy of this on my shelf right now I'm looking at. And I've heard this is a pretty good book and that students like it, so I'm going to have it available. It's a really good copy. A lot of these are in really good shape. We have the sequel to Holes, Small Steps by Louis Sachar, and this book's amazing. So this is what it looks like, right? This is underneath the cover. The cover has like the printouts, and like this is the cover. This is such a cool book. So that's the sequel to Holes. I think this one might be more approachable for high schoolers, whereas Holes is pretty decidedly a middle school book. But here's one thing I learned from student teaching: just because a child is in high school does not mean they are reading at a high school reading level. So we also got Bud Not Buddy, which is something I read, I think, in like either late elementary or early middle school. But this is something that can be like connected to historical fiction and their history class. It may be pretty interesting. I definitely want to get The Watsons Go to Birmingham. That's by the same author, because we typically read The Ballad of Birmingham and talk about the civil rights era through that lens, and so that would be a good book to pair with that poem. The last book we got from the Habitat was The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, which was again on my list, and I was so excited to find it. It's got this library jacket that I'll probably take off just, you know, for, you know, aesthetic's sake. But this is a really fascinating story, and someone is going to like this. There's those kids who are into like true crime and like real stories of what happened to people in America, and I think that is a very compelling narrative, what happened to Henrietta Lacks and what we gained from it, but what also was taken from her without consent. So I'm very interested to probably read that before I put it on the shelf, but I'm so excited that we were able to find it there. So let's go to the next place, which I think is going to be David's Used Books. The very first place we went on Saturday was David's Used Books, and they do a really great deal of $1 paperbacks, $2 hardcovers, and they let you have a credit if you bring books in sort of as like a trade. And so, you know, there are books that you've seen me unhaul the past 2 years that I don't want, I'm not going to keep, and aren't appropriate for a school library that I can bring in and get some credit. Well, it turns out that Gina also had some credit, so we had $28 to spend just on pure store credit, and boy did we do it. I have $1 left in credit after Saturday, but we did a great job, and it was kind of between the two of us. She got a couple books too, so, you know, we did a really good job here. So let me show you what we got for the library from David's. The first is The Scarlet Pimpernel. I have talked about this book many times on my channel. I think it's a very good like masked hero story. It's the precursor to Zorro and to Batman, and just this rich man doing what's right under a hidden identity because he acts like a fop in real life, and his wife sort of finding out and helping him. And I find this very approachable as far as a classic. I think they'll be interested in sort of the drama of, you know, what's going to happen next, and, you know, who's going to get in trouble, and everything seems to be going wrong and then it doesn't. And I think that's a really good little introduction to classics for most kids, especially those who like superhero movies or superhero stories or comic books. This is a good way to get into that. And I think this is a really solid copy. The print is not too small, which I appreciate. And the cover isn't like too weird, because sometimes they might get judgmental of the covers. I also got All Quiet on the Western Front. It's a war novel. It's, I think, more of a memoir style, but again, this happened in World War I. Someone's going to have to teach World War I at some point, and there's going to be a kid who wants to know more, and he goes into my English class. I can recommend this book. I'm not big on war stories, but I know, like, my husband is, and my father-in-law is, and they would be interested in something like this. So there's going to be at least one student who may want to know more about the actual, like, battles and the experience of being on the battlefield, and so this will be something good for them to read. I found Life as We Knew It. This is not exactly the most recent new YA novel, but I had heard of it before. I've seen decent things about it, and I'm really interested to see if the kids are going to like it. Again, we had this discussion, me and Gina, about people aging into YA, and so stories that came out when we were young, we were in like youth-appropriate ages, are constantly being reread. And we talked about books that hold up against time, like Hunger Games still is amazing. I don't know the last time you reread it, but Hunger Games is still really, really good, and it was written as long ago as it was. So we have to kind of keep those old ones in there too, because they still have some good stuff. So Life as We Knew It, I don't know, maybe someone will want it. I also got A Wind in the Door and A Swiftly Tilting Planet, which are two of the books in the Time Quintet by Madeleine L'Engle, or Madeleine L'Engle, I don't know how you pronounce that. And I have a third one I got from a different place, so I've almost got the entire quintet. And I just, this is, again, more of a middle grade series, but someone's going to read this and it's going to get them into fantasy or sci-fi, and this will sort of be the door opening for more experiences in more complicated worlds, because this is a more approachable fantasy for beginning readers. And all it takes is the one book, and next thing you know, they're just interested. So these are two of the books in the Time Quintet that I found at David's. Speaking of books that can tie to historical things, this is by Margaret Peterson Haddix, and it's called Uprising, and it is actually about girls who were in the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire incident in 1911. If you've not heard of that, look into it. It is one of the reasons we have the safety precautions in factory situations that we have today, because it was so devastating. There were so many deaths and tragic things that could have been prevented just based on safety and security. And it was always interesting to me, but I didn't know that this existed, which is sort of more, again, a YA approach to this incident. So if they're learning about it in class, you hear someone talking about it, our history teacher brought up this thing that happened in New York, you can go, all right, well, here's a book about it. I think that's fascinating. I think that's such a great way to get them interested in reading and also in history, is to combine the two. The next book is one I have not heard about, You Bring the Distant Near, but the cover is beautiful. Look at that. And it says 5 Girls, 3 Generations, One Great American Love Story. Again, I've never heard about it, but it seems it's about Tara, who immigrated from India to New York, Sonia, who is falling in love with a boy her mother can't accept, daughter of a Bollywood star, Anna, and Chantal, who's a dancer, and Renee is the center that binds them all together. So it's a bunch of women who are deciding what to leave behind as far as their Bengali traditions and what to, like, take with them to America. And I think that could be a really interesting story for someone. The next book is Going Bovine by Libba Bray. And full disclosure, this is a hardcover, and it's probably going to stay here and be replaced with the paperback that's in that cart over there, because the paperback is in better condition, and I'm not afraid for something to happen to that, and I'll just keep the hardcover. I haven't heard much about this, but it was recommended to me to read as like a teenager, so it's going in the library. The last one we found at David's that is for the library is In the Time of Butterflies by Julia Alvarez. I read How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accent for a women lit class. I really loved it. I think her writing style is beautiful and the historical fiction nature is nice. This book is the fictional story of the real life tale of the Las Mariposas, the butterflies, who were sisters that fought against tyranny in the Dominican Republic. And I've heard about it, and it's been recommended, and I would highly recommend watching the Ask a Mortician video where she talks about them, because I think she mentions them in the Iconic Corpse series, about the 3 women because of how they died. But they were doing fantastic things, and being very brave. And again, this is something that's more of a historical connection that they can read about and connect to, these brave young women and the choices they made. So I was really excited to see this because it was already, again, on my list for my library, and finding it was just kismet. This next pile of books came from 2 different Salvation Armies Goodwills. I can't remember the exact titles of them, but they've got multiples in that town because it's a pretty big town. But I just combined them together because I only got about 3 or 4 from each place, and I already pulled out the ones that I bought for me, so these are the ones that are going in the library. First, we have An Acceptable Time, which I believe is another part of the Time Quintet. Yes. It says it has all the other ones listed, but I think it's the 5th and final book in the Time Quintet, that starts with A Wrinkle in Time. So again, it's nice to have that series. I know it's a little older, but I just read A Wrinkle in Time earlier this year, and I found it really great. So someone will read this and like it. The next, we have The Perks of Being a Wallflower. This is a classic. We could say it's overrated if we want to, but it's not. Someone's going to read this and relate to it and have a great time, and it's very easy to read, which is important. The next book we have is a beautiful cover of Their Eyes Are Watching God. I've been looking for one of these to keep in the classroom because I can't put my annotated version in there. And we did see another one, but the cover was really distracting, and it's one of those things where I knew the kids would get so distracted laughing at the cover they wouldn't actually appreciate the novel, and this book is too good to not be appreciated fully. So someone's going to pick this up because it looks really pretty and get just a lot out of it. I know it. I've never actually heard about this one, but the cover was compelling. It's Patron Saints of Nothing by Randy Rebay. I thought it was beautiful, and the first sentence on the back says, a powerful coming-of-age story about grief, guilt, and the risks a Filipino-American teenager takes to uncover the truth about his cousin's murder. Someone's going to love this, and it looks like it's a new enough release that it should be pretty relatable to the kids. Let me see when it was actually. It says 2019, so yeah, this is a relatively recent book. I may read this summer before I put it in there so I can recommend it fully. The next book from the thrift store is Me Talk Pretty One Day by David Sedaris, and this is just one of his kind of, I think, collections of short stories about his life in North Carolina. This is a man who is from North Carolina. This is about his speech impediment he had growing up, and he is a gay man living in the South, so his stories are very interesting from that perspective. I think he has recently said some things that are kind of weird and boomerish on Twitter, but I can't cancel all the boomers for saying boomer stuff. It would take all day. But this might be interesting. It was written before all that, so maybe it's got some good stuff. We read a bunch of his short stories in my Southern Lit class, and it was very nice to be seen in that way as these short stories happening in North Carolina. So those could be approachable for some students. The last book that we got from the thrift store is The Great Pretender, and it says, in 1973, a charismatic doctor convinced 8 healthy people to commit themselves to mental hospitals. They had to prove their sanity to be set free. Their undercover mission would change our understanding of madness forever. And that's just interesting to me. Again, I think those true crime kids and those folks who like conspiracies and stuff, they're really going to like this. I can't believe we've got a book of the month from 2019 in the thrift store, but that was not the only one we found, so we get to see a couple more of those in a second. Before we look at my books, the ones that I got for myself from this big venture, let's look at the books that Gina brought me from Charlotte that she picked up, that she found. We have a edition of Ernest Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms that is really nice. Again, we love pretty classics to keep because one kid's going to be, they want to read classics. We have a Ruta Sepetys book, Between Shades of Grey. It looks like the cover of like a romance novel or like the Shatter Me series, which is weird, but anyway, she's pretty popular, and if they've read some of her other stuff, they may like that. We have Patrick Ness's The Rest of Us Just Live Here, which I have heard about, and it's something about being in a story with, like, superheroes, right? But it's about normal people. I've heard about it, but this is a decently new release, and I'm really excited to have that. We have another classic. We have this really awesome cover of Othello. And it looks like it's got a decent amount of background information too, which is important for Shakespeare because it's not the most approachable material. But this is a really, really nice edition of it, and it's got plenty of annotations and definitions in it, so they should have no problems. We have a TV show cover of The Handmaid's Tale. Always looking for a version of Handmaid's Tale. I actually have an old paperback copy already pulled out to take to a classroom library, but if multiple people want to read it, now I have 2 copies. We have Alexandra Bracken's The Darkest Minds, which it's book 1 in a series, so if someone likes it, there's my excuse to get the rest of the series, I guess. I've never heard of this one, so this may be something that I end up reading, you know, for fun out of the classroom library. The next is Catherine Fisher's Incarceron, and Gina said she had seen this was really popular with kids in the library she works at, so she saw it at the thrift store and had to get it. I think this book is really pretty. It has like this kind of holographic or like shifting color scheme. Very compelling. We have the first book in the Magnus Chase series. Again, if they like it, then I will look to get the rest of the series for you. And maybe the library has a couple different copies. I don't know who else's library had this, and maybe it's just because we were a really poor, like, county school. But we always had, like, books 2, 4, and, like, 8 in a series. It was never, like, in any order. It was always just, like, whatever was left over, and they never actually tried to fill in the gaps. So I ended up reading a lot of books from like the midpoint in the series onward because of that. I think this next one is like a YA contemporary. I think it might be more of a hard-hitting YA, but the cover is gorgeous. It's called Little Do We Know by Tamara Ireland Stone, and it's just a very pretty book. And again, I think it's like a YA contemporary, which I don't obviously have a lot of those right now, so very welcome. We have a Sarah Dessen. We have Saint Anything. And I was a very big Sarah Dessen fan in high school. I pretty much read one of her books every year during the summer. So some girl is going to love this. I just know that. Or some guy. You know, guys like romance too. She also found a book that was on my list, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, which is a nonfiction story about a little boy who harnessed the wind. So this is going to be really cool. This cover is gorgeous. Another nonfiction that has a like movie cover is The Bling Ring. Don't know a lot about it, but I did see when that like came out. So it's something about teenagers like playing the system and like getting popular or something. I think it's actually pre-influencer culture. Like it was right before all that. But anyway, someone will like this. Someone who likes, you know, watching television and reality shows will enjoy this nonfiction novel. We've got a book by Paula Morris, which is called Ruined. And I think it's like a mystery thriller, like ghost story. Okay. This is something that like I probably wouldn't get as much out of it now because I'm an adult and I'm used to reading like adult versions of those novels, which have higher stakes. But this will be, again, a good approachable way to get into that genre as a teenager. We also have Winter Girls. And I don't know a lot about it, but it's from the author of Speak, which is another book that is on my list of things to get. So, here we go. I can't believe she found this one. I read this one in high school. It's called Sloppy First by Megan McCafferty, and it is interesting. So it may seem kind of dated for some folks because it is as old as it is. I am not a young person. But someone might still like it. I mean, it's like a YA contemporary. It doesn't age that badly. I think this is another, like, mystery thriller, but more youth-focused. It's called Come Find Me by Megan Miranda. Again, a good kind of way to get into that from the perspective of being YA. The next is really exciting. It's Reverie by Ryan LaSala. And this is relatively new and pretty popular, so I'm really excited to give them this option to read. Can't believe she found that. So I think the next one is also a YA contemporary she found, and it's called Piecing Me Together by Renee Watson. I don't know anything about it, but the description looks really interesting, and the book cover is gorgeous. So that's exciting. And the very last book that she brought me that I'm putting in the classroom library is American Panda by Gloria Chow. And I've heard good things about this one. I've seen a lot of people interested in it. And so I might also read this one before I put it in the library. Or I'll read it while it's in the library. So those were all the books that we found for the classroom library itself. Now let me show you the books that I got that are mostly for me. It may also end up in the library in the future, but mostly for me. I also found this Dover Thrift version of the Scarlet Pimpernel, which I thought was really pretty. I probably will keep this on my regular shelf. I've got that already, that like 1970s cover that's really nice. But I think that cover is also really cute with the illustration. I found a Dover Thrift of Hedda Gabler, which is a wild play by Ibsen, which most of his plays are. And it's just very dark. And so I'm going to read it, and this may end up in the library. It may end up in the library, but we'll see. I don't really think it's appropriate for teenagers, but, you know, if there is that one teen that's really into the dark stuff and I think can handle it, it's there. I also found, amazingly, The Conjure Woman by Charles Chestnut. And I love Charles Chestnut. I have like 3 of his books on my shelf right now. I have a bunch on my Kindle because it's easier to get them that way. And it's hard to find them in print because people don't understand how amazing he is. The next book I got was at David's, and it is another Amy Tan novel, The Bone Setter's Daughter. I see I have The Kitchen God's Wife and The 100 Secret Senses currently on my shelf. And I have only read The Joy Luck Club, but I really loved The Joy Luck Club, and so I'm not opposed to collecting some of her books so I can maybe read them this summer. We also found Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. This is, again, mostly for me, but, like, this was one of my mom's favorite books in high school, and so I kind of want to do, like, a reading my mom's favorite high school books video, because there's another series I have up here, and I was almost named after that main character, so it feels like I should read that, just to connect with her in that way. But I think I had started to read this many, many years ago, and just couldn't get into it, but it's worth a shot. This is, like, wild stuff. So I also, from I think it was David's, got a copy of The Merchant of Venice, and this matches a bunch of my other Signet editions. In fact, I might already have this particular edition, in which case this is going in the classroom library. The last 2 are ones that Gina found me in Charlotte. I'm so excited she did, because I don't own physical editions of this, and it's one of my favorite series I've read. It's definitely one of my favorite books, and that is Susan E.'s Angel Fall and World After. She could not find the 3rd one, which is sad, but I'll just have to go buy that, I guess. And they've never done these in hardcover, so they only have the paperbacks and the Kindle edition. I read this accidentally when I was on this weird, like, fallen angel kick back in 2011, and I think they either had it for free or 99¢ on Kindle, and I was like, I'll take it, and was obsessed. It was so good, and then I never picked up the sequel until this year. So, but now I own these 2, and hopefully I will get my hands on the 3rd one soon, and these will just stay in my library because these are mine. I will get copies for the kids. You know, like if they really want to read about angels, I'll get copies for the kids. But those are the books that I'm keeping. I think the video is going to end here. I'm actually going to a different town today, and I may hit up Enjoy. We know how I love Enjoy, just to see if they have anything that was already on my list that I can add to this. In the meantime, I'm probably just going to go get the tub that I keep in the back of the house with my library books and bring it up here and put these all in the tub to put in a classroom that eventually someone will put me in charge of, which is a wild thought. You've come back. Don't act like you like me. Are you mad because I made you leave while I recorded? Okay, well, let me go cuddle him since he seems so abused right now. Yeah, his life is hard. Okay, you say goodbye? No? Okay, he said goodbye. Please ignore the fact that the lighting is now terrible. It is much later in the day. We have gone and gotten my mom's car, and we happened to go to the thrift store, Enjoy thrift store, while we were out. And I'm telling you, Enjoy is one of those places that, like, is very hit or miss, but when it hits, it hits. And I'm sorry if you can hear my dog eating in the background. I have to feed my son, so he's eating. But anyway, here are the books that I got from Enjoy thrift store for my classroom library, and some also for me, because, of course. Okay, we have Where the Lilies Bloom. I remember reading this in 8th grade, and I have a copy in my library now in my children's section, but I did want a copy of the classroom because I think this is a pretty good story of like a young person, a young woman being like pretty cool. So maybe someone will want to read that. Hey bud, speak of the devil, are you through eating? Can I take off your noisy collar? You're naked! You're naked! Okay, alright, now you're naked, and I'm gonna get in trouble with YouTube. I'm gonna try to show people the rest of these books. Yeah, you're gonna help? Alright, you can show this one. We got Henry the Fifth. Isn't that what the V? Yeah, Henry the Fifth, but it's a Folgers edition, and they are all these really pretty colors, and this one is like a turquoisey teal color, and I eventually want to have all of them, and I'm definitely going to buy one for 50 cents to eventually have all of them. I think I have Julius Caesar in this collection too, and it's in a blue, so those are 2 down. I got Turn of the Screw by Henry James, which is a novella. So this has a bunch of extra information. I just flipped through. It has a bunch of extra stuff in it. But Turn of the Screw is a weird little scary story novella thing where a governess thinks her children that she's watching are being haunted by ghosts of previous caretakers. It's pretty good. I'm probably going to put this in the classroom library because it's a pretty good edition. We got Stephen Ambrose's Band of Brothers, which is the written version, inspiration, I guess, for the miniseries movie thing, which I've never seen, but I'm sure that if I said Band of Brothers, my husband would immediately know what I'm talking about. But this, again, goes into sort of that, like, All Quiet on the Western Front, sort of realistic fiction thing. I almost picked up The English Patient, but I realized that was more for me than it was for a classroom library, so I decided to not do that. We also got Carson McCullers' The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. I've heard of this one, and I've heard of this author before. Like just last week, a teacher was talking about how she teaches this book in her class. So this is going to be for me to read because it feels like it's a classic that I'm supposed to know. So know nothing about this at all. Gonna read it. I got a nice finished hardcover edition of Rose Under Fire, which I don't think I can reach the one. Oh, yes, I can. I had this that I got 2 years ago that's uncorrected advanced copy, paperback, and so now I have the hardcover, which is pretty great. I read the first book in the series, and I just mentioned it earlier in the video, Codename Verity. It made me cry. It was so good. And this is the story of the other girl after the events of that first novel. I'm looking forward to reading it. So I'll probably put that in the classroom library, and I'll probably keep the ARC just because they're not going to appreciate it, and I'd rather have them have access to the finished copy. I got 2 classics in a really cool cover. They're called Collins Classics I'd never seen before. The Great Gatsby and Frankenstein. Because we know I'm constantly collecting editions of Frankenstein, and I have so many copies of The Great Gatsby now, but I just think it's kind of cool. Also, pause. I just realized that I did not show the really cool edition of Frankenstein that Gina got me, where it's clearly James Dean with like Frankenstein's face, and it says this kid was born on the wrong side of the lab. It's called Pulp the Classics, and these are great. And if I have remembered to show that in a previous video, and I'm not remembering correctly, then enjoy seeing it a second time. You're welcome. It's very cool. I got The Green Mile #2. It's a serial version of The Green Mile. I don't know that The Green Mile is really long enough to warrant this, but I got it anyway. I got, and the sticker's coming off, so I'm just going to take that off. I got a hardcover, foiled, like bookmarked edition of Walden and Other Things by Henry David Thoreau. It's got foiling on the top, but not on the deckled edges. Nancy Puckett, 1970. And this was published in 1970. Okay. And sure, I can put it on my cloth-bound bookshelf that is right back there because it fits in with that. It's kind of a red, orange, brown color. So, yay. I got this really cool edition, 50th anniversary edition, actually, of Things Fall Apart, and I've been looking at getting this specific edition, so that's neat. I got this very pretty cover of Persuasion from Jane Austen. this will probably go in my classroom library because I have better, like, nicer editions of Persuasion on my shelf already, and I think this would be compelling for a student to pick up. Now, will they like Austen once they begin to read her? Maybe. Here's where, I mean, I got a Golden Compass by Philip Pullman. I don't like this series, and I don't like the intent that it was written in, and I know that comes from that evangelical background that I can't escape, but somebody's going to like this series. Somebody is going to pick up this book, and they're going to love it, and it's going to get them into fantasy, and I can't keep books out of my library just because I have a distaste for their author and the reasons they wrote stuff, because I also have this book, Frank Peretti's The Hangman's Curse, and this is a book written with a very Christian slant. So while the Golden Compass is very, like, anti-religion based fantasy, or specifically like anti-organized Christianity fantasy, this is absolutely like Christian thriller for youths. But it's a really nice, huge hardcover, and it's not overly preachy, and there are going to be students like me who are raised in the church and are not supposed to read things that aren't churchy, and here you go. Your parents can't argue against this because this man is writing about Jesus. The next book I have is Wild Beauty by Anne-Marie McLemore, and I don't think I have any of their books. I'm just thinking about it now. I don't think I have any of their books on my shelf, but I've been meaning to get some of them. So the fact that this was in Enjoy for like 50 cents, amazing. And I think this is the normal cover. This isn't like, I think they have an Owl Crate edition of it. This is the normal version. But it's such a beautiful book. And last, but certainly not least, we have The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller for 50 cents. It's like brand new. It's barely touched. I mean, it clearly came from some kind of bargain place. It's got stickers everywhere. But yeah, Costco. That's funny. But I didn't own this, and everyone loves it. So I'm going to read this and then just finally maybe understand the hype. But that has been the Enjoy haul. And I think that's where I'm going to end it. I think that this ends the video. And thank you for coming along with me to look at what I'm putting in my classroom library and some of the things that I've pulled out to keep for myself. Also today, between what you saw and what just happened, like going to town, I started a Google Sheets to show off my library. And as soon as that's available, I will make a view-only copy available, and there will be a copy of the library, a copy of the wish list, so that way people can maybe know things that I want to, like, put in the library, and you can feel, if you need to, like, helping out, you can add books as you see fit. It would be really great to be able to get a couple more new releases for this. I'm at the mercy of what's available in town, but I'm very blessed that this has happened. I'm not looking forward to organizing this, but I'm also kind of looking forward to organizing it, so I can't complain too much. Anyway, that's been the video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the haul. Bye! Nimoy wants to help so bad, but he's just kind of in your way. Yeah. I know you're the star of this channel, but, like, you know Mommy has to show the books, too. Yeah, okay. Okay.